Good morning. Good morning and happy Easter. It's wonderful to see the VIP lounge back in action and our young folks taking advantage of it. It's nice to see so many young people here in the sanctuary, excited and playing and looking at these things, these toys, as if they've never seen them before. But I guess it's been a couple of years. And it's nice to have big organ music on Easter morning. That seems appropriate, doesn't it? So welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Reverend Connie Simon. Located on the ancestral lands of the Adena, the Hopewell, the Miamia, and the Shawnee people, our urban community welcomes all with love, supports learning and spiritual growth, serves our wider community, and works for justice, equity, and inclusion. We are very glad you're here with us this morning, whether in person or virtually. During the service, you may hear mention of programs or other things that interest you. You may have seen some things in the announcements that we've started playing before service begins. If you see anything that you want to ask more questions about, or if there are any questions you have in general, please send an email to member-care@firstuu.com. There you can get all kinds of assistance in understanding our community, the things we do, our programming, and our educational offerings. We begin our time together by lighting our chalice, the chosen symbol of our faith, with these words by John Bannister Tabb. Out of the dusk a shadow, then a spark. Out of the cloud a silence, then a lark. Out of the heart a rapture, then a pain. Out of the dead, cold ashes, life again. Please join me in singing our vision song. The words will appear on the screen. And since it's Easter, please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able to do so. We are a liberal religion, welcoming wonder and spiritually free. We're sustained by a loving tradition, moved and inspired by the future we see. Only seeking and working for justice, gently transforming lives through deeds great and small. Young and old, sharing meaning and mission, we joyfully offer our vision to all. And while you're up, turn and greet your neighbor. Thought that might be a nice thing. Hey! It's good to see you too. My mom. Something tells me that you've missed doing that. Bit by bit, things return to us as the pandemic changes. I won't say ends, because in some places, cases are going up again. But while we are able, while it is safe, we'll enjoy one another's company as much as we can. and will always respect our contact preferences. So while masks are not required, if you feel more comfortable wearing one, please do. And even if we do bring back greeting our neighbors and singing, please know that your wishes for your own personal safety will always be respected. And as part of those wishes, as part of that respect of personal safety and our own individual experiences, we honor our joys and our sorrows. We take time to recognize the things that have been going on in our individual lives since last we were together. The good things, the not so good things, the painful things, the joyful things. We take time to hold them all up in the light of day and in the love of community, with the hope that our joys will be shared by those who love us, and that our sorrows will also be softened by the love of those around us. That's why we have stones and waters. The stones represent our individual joys and our individual sorrows. The water represents the loving power of community. And this is water that's been blessed by all of you. It's water that gets reused and reused and reused so that it is full of love. More may be added from time to time because nature has this way of evaporating water. But it comes from a core of water that's been blessed by community, that we replenish in the fall at our water communion. I'm excited and hopeful that we'll be able to do water communion this fall because our existing blessed water is down to about this much. It needs to be replenished. So at this time, let's take a moment to ground ourselves and to hold in our hearts those who are experiencing sorrows right now, those who are having a tough time, those who are facing the horrors of war, the ravages of weather, the pain and death of violence. Sadly, all of those things are happening in our world right now, with yet another mass shooting in South Carolina, the war in Ukraine, fires burning in Colorado and New Mexico, flooding in several states, hail and storms devastating crops and damaging property. We hold all of those sorrows in our hearts. We hold the sorrows and the pain of those in our own community. We send healing wishes to those who are ailing, to Anne, who took a fall, to Linnea, who's been hospitalized. We hold all of them in our hearts and are anxious for their speedy recoveries, which will be coming. We also celebrate some joys. We have some things to be happy about. The return of the VIP lounge. Look at those happy faces over there. The return of singing, big singing, hint, hint. The celebration of the holiday of Easter. The acknowledgement and the recognition of other holy days of our partners in faith. The recognition of Passover and Ramadan and Earth Day and Ostara. All of these are joys we hold. So to that point, now I would like you, as you are willing or able, to come forward and drop a stone in water to represent a particular joy or sorrow that you are carrying, so that your sorrow can be shared by the community and your joy can be amplified for all of us. As you are willing and able, please come forward up the side aisles and return down the middle. I share with you now a meditation written by Sarah York. In the tomb of the soul, we carry secret yearnings, pains, frustrations, loneliness, fears, regrets, and worries. In the tomb of the soul, we take refuge from the world and its heaviness. In the tomb of the soul, we wrap ourselves in the security of darkness. Sometimes this is a comfort. Sometimes it is an escape. Sometimes it prepares us for experience. Sometimes it insulates us from life. Sometimes this tomb life gives us time to feel the pain of the world and reach out to heal others. Sometimes it numbs us and locks us up with our own concerns. In this season, where light and dark balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves. Grateful for the darkness that has nourished us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within us and among us. Possibilities for new life in ourselves and in our world. So as we drop 3 final stones, one for those we've named, one for those whose names we do not know, and one for those whose names are carefully guarded in our hearts, I invite you to join me in a moment of silent meditation, reflection, and prayer as you enjoy our beautiful flowers from Ellen Wathen this morning in honor of her mother's birthday. Betty Relihan's birthday is April 18th.
Can you hear me? There we go. There's a tradition here at First Church of giving out potted flowers every Easter. If you've ever wondered where that tradition came from, today's story is for you. Ellen and the Easter Flowers, a mostly true tale from the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. Imagine, if you can, Cincinnati 100 years ago. It was April 4th, 1915, Easter, and Cincinnatians were headed to churches across the city. To get there, they walked, traveled by cart or carriage, took the incline, boarded a streetcar, or, if they were wealthy enough, they drove one of those brand new automobiles. However 9-year-old Ellen Wheeler traveled to the First Congregational Church of Cincinnati that morning, I can guarantee you she was dressed in her Sunday best. Taking her seat among the church pews, I imagined she daydreamed about what she would be doing that spring and summer. Maybe she was daydreaming about taking a stroll through Eden Park. Would she be able to stop in at the art museum? Or maybe she was daydreaming about going to Coney Island and enjoying all that its boardwalk had to offer. Or maybe, just like us, Ellen was just happy spring had finally arrived. After the service, I'm certain Ellen's parents talked with the other adults in the congregation. They discussed the merits of pacifism and whether the U.S. should get involved with the Great War. They gossiped about others, who had just had a baby and who had just gotten married. And they wondered if the Redlegs would pull off a winning season. And I am certain that Ellen, like all of our wonderful children here today, let her parents talk without ever interrupting them or begging them to leave. Okay, maybe not. But that is when I imagined it happened. Mrs. Thayer approached young Ellen Wheeler and struck up a conversation. Perhaps they talked about their interests. Perhaps Ellen shared her daydreams for the summer. Or perhaps Mrs. Thayer just noticed that Ellen was looking a bit bored. Whatever the reason, I imagine that is when Mrs. Thayer gave young Ellen Wheeler a potted plant. Fast forward 20 years, and now Ellen Wheeler is Ellen Hall. The country is now in the throes of the Great Depression. Many in our country can't afford food for their table or a roof over their head. Seeing the despair all around, Ellen decided to do something about it. No, she can't feed all the hungry. And no, she can't house all the homeless. But she can at least bring a little joy into someone's life. She can, at the very least, bring a little joy to a child's life. So Ellen begins giving potted plants every Easter to the children at her church, this church, just as Mrs. Thayer had given her a plant. And over time, the tradition grew. In the late 20th century, Margaret Emshoff expanded the tradition so that religious education graduates and adults could also receive flowers. Margaret also ensured the flower tradition would continue long after her death by leaving a bequest, with the stipulation that the money she left would be used first and foremost for Easter flowers. Just as we have the seed to thank for giving us such wonderful flowers, we have these three women, Mrs. Thayer, Ellen Hall, and Margaret Emshoff, to thank for giving us our wonderful flower tradition. Their kindness and generosity planted a seed in this congregation that has bloomed time and again. Call their blossom the flower of covenant, the flower of community, the flower of faith. I simply call it love. May it continue to bloom here for generations to come.
At this time, I'd like to invite all of the children here to come forward and take a potted flower. We're making it really hard because there's also some hidden eggs behind our flowers, and those are a bit more appealing. Wonderful. Now I invite anyone else who would like to come forward and pick a potted flower.
As you can see, there are still some flowers left. At the end of the service, if you'd like to have a second one, please help yourself. We'll make sure that they all find good homes. This morning, we were going to have someone from our stewardship team give you some really good news. Unfortunately, they weren't able to attend, but I'm going to share the good news with you anyway. Through your generosity, we are less than $400 from meeting that match. You'll get the exact number in an email that will come from the stewardship team today, but thank you for your generosity, for your contributions, for your willingness to support the work of First Church. Supporting First Church is easy. You can text GIVE to 513-717-7373. If you have access to our Breeze member system, you can click Give Now. On our website, you can give at www.firstuu.com. Or you can mail a check made payable to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati and mail it to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. During the month of April, those gifts that are designated for our Share the Plate will go to support the funding of the WHG and Beulah Carter Social Justice Fund. The amounts raised will be distributed next year, at the end of the fiscal year, to organizations that are doing the work of justice, equity, and inclusion in our community. Our virtual offering will now be taken. And in a true moment of multitasking, give me a second to have some water as I join the choir. One more moment of multitasking. We are about to sing the Hallelujah Chorus. If there's anyone in the sanctuary who would like to join us, we have extra music. Please feel free. If you would like to join us in singing from your seat, please feel free. Come on up, Carol. There's music on the edge of the piano. Don't be quiet. That was fun. The seeds of this service were planted in 2020 by Lee Kaler and Cynthia Heinrich. At the time, Cynthia was working on music for the choir, cataloging everything, and told me that she'd found some sheet music from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and wouldn't it be great if we built a service using just music from 1900? At the same time, Lee Kaler was working on cataloging the books in that locked cabinet in the back of the sanctuary. And he came in and he said, "Look what I found, look what I found. It's a book of Reverend Thayer's sermons." I said, "Oh, that's really cool." And Cynthia was just here talking about music. What if we had big organ, big choir, and a Reverend Thayer's sermon this year? COVID thought otherwise. Oh, and another piece of that was that Meredith was going to do her history of the flowers, that video that you saw. Well, that particular Easter, that first Easter, you may remember that we celebrated it on Zoom. And I told you what we had planned and that we couldn't do it. Well, today, if you haven't figured it out, we're doing it. Kind of. We've got big organ music. We had our story of young Ellen Wheeler, young Ellen Hall, as you may think of her now, and the flowers in the church. And I'm going to read to you, not all, but part of Reverend George Augustine Thayer's Easter sermon from April 1903, entitled "The Tragedy of the Death of Jesus." I won't read all of it, but I will make all of it available by email later if you want to hear it, because I'm not sure the kids are going to find it all that exciting. The tragedy of the death of Jesus. Let us consider the reasons for the violent ending of the teaching of Jesus. Why was he crucified? Upon the plain face of history, not mixing with the New Testament any of the ideas which in the process of centuries have covered over the simple early story and made it hard for the average person to think of Jesus as a human being, as a flesh and blood actor in any such world as this in which we live and speak. He was a reformer of the faith of his nation, the Jews. Jesus appears to have been one to whom religion, the intimacy of God with every soul, was the most sacred thing upon earth. And anybody who belittled this sense of God's daily presence with man by making the practice of religion easy through some act of money paying or the like, or hard by substituting troublesome penances for inner character, especially anybody wearing the title of a religious functionary, was an enemy of righteousness, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Jesus had the misfortune to be a forerunner of Hus and Luther and Servetus without any influence with armed princes. He stood up for reform with his naked personality, a dangerous and audacious thing to do if he expected immediate success to his principles. For of course, he stirred up all the furies of official dignity, and as soon as possible was stopped in his mischief. We must bear in mind that Jesus was not killed because his simple daily life was a protest against hypocrisy. He was killed because he spoke vehemently and angrily against those leaders, as well as because some of his discourses to large bodies of people seemed to them to assail the very roots of reverence for law and temple. Your and my Unitarian beliefs have many a time been deemed equally blasphemous and dangerous, one of the last of English laws for punishing blasphemy by death being directed against the denial of the Trinity. These men 1900 years ago did not believe they were killing a true prophet. They, above all, did not think they were killing God, nor did anybody else think so for 200 years, until romance and fairy tale begun to have full sweep. As for the essential work of Jesus, the endeavor to put religion on a basis of simple sincerity of thought and conduct, that was not stopped by the crucifixion. It was promoted by his death. From that dramatic hour sprung up, as there probably would never have arisen if he'd lived the full natural term of years to die in a peaceful bed, a reverence for his person, a minute microscopic study of every word which he uttered, and the placing of him and his ideas upon a pedestal of adoration such as has attended the career of no other human being. I think, were he to return to earth, as we all fondly think of ourselves doing someday, to see what is left of our memory, he might feel it a tragedy of his aim to lift up the world by a better gospel, that the parts of his words for which the world had seemed to care the most have not been his praise of gentleness, his panegyrics of love and mercy, his insistence upon justice to the weak, even to the extent of surrender of what might seem the private right of the stronger, but rather some chance words of his about kingship or other phrases about the impassable gulf between the true and false believer, or mystical sayings about delivering to Peter the keys to the kingdoms of heaven and hell. Does Christendom as you know it heartily accept the creed of the Golden Rule? Does it turn its cheek to the smiter? Do its followers in the churches always stand up for high and severe morality in public or private places? If not, then our age is still crucifying the preacher of the Sermon on the Mount. Yet slowly, very slowly, but perceptibly to the sharp-eyed observer, love is conquering hate. Men are getting a little closer together, and intolerance and persecution are being supplanted by respect for the sanctity of private judgment of free speech. The man on the cross so far has not died in vain. George Augustine Thayer, minister of the First Congregational Unitarian Church of Cincinnati, this space, from 1885 to 1915, and its minister emeritus from 1915 to 1925. Beloved Reverend Thayer, we thank you for your scholarship and for your message this morning. Your commitment and dedication during your many years of service to this congregation as its minister and in an emeritus role are an indelible part of the history of this church. It was you who brought us to this building, who created this space that so many of us love and have been honored to call home over the years. And it was you who continued and assisted in the sowing of seeds of conflict in our congregation. As Tim so eloquently described in his service just 2 weeks ago, for all of Reverend Thayer's good works, and despite the fact that I honestly believe he haunts this building, one lesson that may have escaped him in a way was that sometimes change is exactly what's needed. He talks about Jesus as a revolutionary and talks about the need to respect the reverence for tradition And that reverence for tradition is a wonderful thing. Tradition is not something to be scrapped. It is something to be respected. It's also something to be viewed in context. The story that we don't tell is really hard to imagine right now, because when Reverend Thayer stepped down as minister of this church, a new minister was called. And that new minister, Reverend Robinson, talked about change, an anti-war movement, the need to promote anti-oppression, to promote justice and equity, to start talking about social justice in the broader context. And Reverend Thayer didn't appreciate it. So much like Jesus, Reverend Robinson left the church, or was separated from the church. And along with him went the youth and the young adults. And it harmed the congregation for years to come. So I wonder in 1903 if, when he was thinking about the tragedy of the death of Jesus, if Reverend Thayer had in his mind really how powerful the message of Jesus was, how important it is to have that message shared and perpetuated, and to have it continue throughout the decades. There's much we can learn from the teachings of Jesus that don't have anything to do with believing that he rose from the dead. You don't have to believe in the supernatural and the mystical to study those teachings, to study the teachings of love, of working together to solve conflict, of recognizing when sometimes conflict is hard to solve and may result in separation, that it may bring sadness, that change may sometimes bring sadness to us, and change can bring great joy. Thankfully, in the history of this congregation, the youth came back. The young adults came back. And the congregation flourished for many years. Our challenge today to each of us is to question whether we will follow the teachings of Jesus. Not the supernatural, but will we follow the base teachings of a man who was the original social justice warrior? Those teachings of love and peace, of kindness and love, of justice and equity. It's up to us to decide. And on this Easter morning, we're given yet another chance for our hope to be reborn, for our commitment and our dedication to be reborn. My hope is that we take advantage of that we roll that stone away and bask in the light of hope and joy and covenant and love. Happy Easter. At this time, I would like to invite my worship associate, Chloe, to come forward and help us extinguish our chalice. And we'll do that by reciting together the words that appear on the screen. Together we say, "We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My friends, I wish you love, I wish you peace, I wish you joy. And I leave you with this prayer. God of Easter and infrequent spring, announce the large covenant to deceitful lands. Drive the sweet liquor through our parched veins. Lure us to fresh schemes of life. Rouse us from tiredness, self-pity. Whet us for use. Fire us with good passion. Restore in us the love of living. Bind us to fear and hope again. Clark Dewey Wells. Go in peace. This is your monkey.